Guys, I love the way that motorcycles sound, but have you ever thought about what it actually takes to get them to sound the way that they do? Well, you're in luck. Today we're talking everything about motorcycle exhaust and how you should modify yours. Let's get into it. So let's explain what your motorcycle stock exhaust is actually doing, because although you think it's a giant hunk of metal you're trying to get rid of your bike instantly, it's actually pretty amazing what a stock exhaust is doing. So you look at this diagram here, looks pretty complicated. I drew it myself in case you can't tell, as you can see by the triple pipes right here. The first thing the exhaust is doing is collecting exhaust gases coming out of the engine into the header pipes. That's its number one right here. So the exhaust gases are going to go through here, and then sometimes they go through these things, what's called a crossover tube. That is to help flatten the torque curve or create a better power band for the exhaust gases moving through. Not all bikes have this, but typically on higher end performance machines, you will see crossover tubes. From there, we enter into a secondary or a link pipe, which is just kind of collecting the 3 or 4 or 2 exhaust pipes into one pipe that's going to then feed into the collector, which is the thing that we're talking most about today. Inside of the collector, there's all kinds of catalytic converters, bafflers, resonators, and packaging so that the sound is being baffled, silenced, and collected for the nasty exhaust gases coming out. This is typically what we refer to as the bread box in motorcycling that we try to get rid of whenever we are swapping to an aftermarket exhaust. From there, you follow into the muffler, which also, as you can see on this diagram, has some additional packing, some cores, and some other things inside of it to help baffle the sound coming out of the motorcycle. And out of that end, you then get a sound and a cleaner emission, which we do want ultimately, because if you look at 1970s LA, smog covered the entire city, and it's better to have cleaner emissions. From there are a couple other accessories, as I like to call them, on the stock exhaust. You have the actual O2 sensor, which typically sits either in the headers or in this link pipe, and that's a sensor that is collecting oxygen levels inside of the exhaust gases to help the computer make fine adjustments to the AFR, or the air to fuel ratio. That's going to come in handy later when we're going to talk about when you modify your bike and how you do want a fuel controller. So the O2 sensor is a really cool little piece of tech that's actually helping everything stay in check. The last thing you might see on a more advanced motorcycle exhaust system is a servo motor that's actually being used to control back pressure and regulate that so that you get better torque across the entire rev range, and sometimes to deaden sound additionally as well. So as you can see, a stock motorcycle exhaust is a pretty complex piece of kit. It's not simply just a couple pipes sticking out of your exhaust to make sure that you're quiet for emissions. A lot of R&D is spent on this, much more than you might realize, because emissions regulations are changing year over year. However, I know why you're here. You want to modify your stock exhaust. You want to make it louder, you want to make it lighter, and you want more power. So let's discuss how you can go about doing that. So why would you want to modify your motorcycle stock exhaust? Well, there's 3 main reasons. The first is that an aftermarket exhaust system just sounds and looks way cooler. We are vain creatures, we motorcyclists, and we want to hear our bikes. The second reason is that it reduces weight. There is a ton of weight to be unlocked whenever you do an aftermarket exhaust system on a motorcycle, usually to the order of magnitude of 10 to 15 pounds, which might not sound like a lot, but on a 400-pound motorcycle, that's a pretty big difference. And the third reason is, of course, to add power. But I do want to caution you, a stock exhaust system on a modern motorcycle is tuned in such a way that you're not going to see huge power gains when you do an aftermarket system, even doing a full exhaust system on your machine, unless you pair it with a fuel controller or a flash, which we will talk about later. Now, when you go to modify your motorcycle's exhaust system, it's going to be helpful to become familiar with what system you have on your bike. Some motorcycles feature exhaust systems that have the catalytic converter and the muffler all welded as one piece, meaning that you're going to have to do a full exhaust system if you want to do any kind of modification at all to the system. Whereas other motorcycles have the mufflers bolted to the catalytic converter that is attached to the headers, meaning that you can do a slip-on exhaust system for ease of use. Let's walk through the pros and cons of a slip-on versus a full system and what you'll need to accomplish both. A slip-on exhaust is going to be one of the easiest exhaust modifications you'll ever do on your bike. This one is definitely beginner approved if you ask us here at Yami Noob. All you got to do for a slip-on exhaust is simply locate the bolt that attaches the pipe to the catalytic converter and collector system. You pop this off, you slide it off, slip it off as the name would imply, and then you slip on the new one. And that's really all that you have to do. What you're doing there is you're going to increase the sound a little bit on the motorcycle because the stock muffling has now disappeared and you have this cleaner pipe that's going to pop off of it, and you're also going to have a cleaner look as well. We highly recommend this because you don't have to do any changes to the maps on the motorcycle. You don't have to do any AFR tuning. You don't have to do a piggyback ECU system. All you got to do is simply slide this on and you have an increase in sound, style, and performance. But let's say you want to go whole hog and do a full exhaust system. What would that entail? Now, if you're chasing the ultimate in performance and sound, a full exhaust system like the one we have featured on this Aprilia Tuono here might be the right fit for you, but there's lots of pros and cons to doing something like this to a motorcycle. Let's talk about the pros. So first off, it looks a lot better. It's hard to deny. Second off, you're gonna get a way better sound because there's no more catalytic converter down here. You're getting a pure exhaust tone coming off of this, and exhaust manufacturers designed these so that you get a really nice crisp sound out of most of these pipes. And the last reasons are, well, it's a lot lighter weight and you're gonna make more power too. So these pretty compelling reasons to put a full exhaust on a motorcycle. The cons, however, are that it's kind of harder to install. If you don't have a lot of mechanical aptitude, installing one of these can be a little daunting, especially on a fully fared motorcycle. The other drawback is you're absolutely going to need a fuel controller or a piggyback ECU system to manage the new AFRs, the air-to-fuel ratios. If you don't do that and you simply slap on a pipe on a bike, you're going to cause issues because it's going to run lean, it's going to run hot, and you're going to get a lot of decel popping whenever you roll off the throttle, which nobody really wants. We really don't recommend that you do a full exhaust system as a newer rider because it's kind of an involved procedure and you need to spend a lot of money to do it as well. On your average beginner bike, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to drop $1,200 to $3,000 to get the full exhaust system, the Flash ECU, or a piggyback ECU, and to do all that work to put it on yourself. You're much better off pocketing that money, getting a faster or better bike, and then maybe doing modifications because you're going to keep that bike a little bit longer. So I mentioned that if you're going to do a full exhaust, you're going to need to do something about the fueling on the bike. Let's talk about flashing your ECU or a piggyback ECU system and which one's right for you. So if you're going to live that life and get a full exhaust system on your motorcycle, you are going to have to do something about the AFR or the air-to-fuel ratio on the bike. Because as we mentioned, with all those exhaust gases being pushed out, the bike is going to run lean and you're going to have to add more fuel to the equation. There's two different ways to do that. You can get a piggyback ECU system or you can flash the ECU. Let's talk about piggyback systems. So that's getting something like a Power Commander 5 from DynoJet, which is a small module that has a bunch of wires sticking out of it. You then intercept the signals on the bikes for stuff like injectors, throttle position sensors, or other sensors so that you can then get the AFR to be right. You typically download a map from the internet, you plug it onto your bike, and it's going to be good enough for you to ride and enjoy. But it's kind of like putting on glasses as opposed to getting laser surgery to fix the problem. So honestly, guys, I've done a lot of Power Commanders on bikes, and in my age and in my day nowadays, I really do prefer just flashing the ECU. It's way easier, you get a way better result, and you can get way more control over what exactly your motorcycle is going to be doing. And it's really easy too, like I mentioned. All you got to do is pop out the brains of your bike, ship it off to a reputable company, get it back, and then your bike is gonna be good to go. I mean, there's no hassle at all in doing that. You're also gonna get way more advanced controls over stuff like ignition timing, throttle blades, and even throttle sensors as well. I highly recommend getting an ECU flash. It's definitely the way to go if you get a full exhaust system. But is all this really worth it? So I'll be brutally honest with you guys. I really don't think it makes sense to get a full exhaust system for street applications. And you might say, but Yami, I've seen you put on so many full exhaust systems on your giveaway bikes, but that's because we like the sound of them for YouTube. On my own personal motorcycles for the street, I've never done anything more than a slip-on exhaust because it's just not really necessary. And the full exhaust system I put on was on my race bike, which is in closed conditions, because the elephant in the room is it's not legal to run a full exhaust system. And yes, there are states you can kind of get away with it and it's not a big deal, but in many restrictive states like California or Virginia or other places like that, you're not going to be able to run a full exhaust system. So in my estimation, if you're a street rider, you are much better off doing a slip-on exhaust system. It's cheaper, it's going to look good, it's going to sound good, and you won't have to do anything for your ECU or a piggyback system. I really think it's the way to go for your average street rider. If you want to pick up a slip-on exhaust system, we have them available over at yamanoob.co. We're a vendor for Leo Vinci pipes, and we've used them for years and really like them as well. So check them out in the description down below and support the show. Remember, every dollar you spend is an entry to win our giveaway bikes as well, which we featured in today's video with our R6, our KTM RC390, and the Aprilia 210 660 factory. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. If you appreciated it, let me know in the comments down below. If you have more exhaust knowledge, let me know down below in the comments as well, and we'll catch you in the next one. Wow, look at all this. Can you believe this all around me? Man, I'm so happy to be here. Look at all this.